Is it a struggle? Yes, we have to realize our strengths and our weaknesses. Hi, and welcome to Why Not? And I'm your host, Janice, the show that's helping others to reach their goals by interviewing inspiring guests with interesting topics to help you get where you want to go. Hi, and welcome to the show. Today's topic, we're going to talk about becoming a real estate appraiser. And that's an interesting career that everyone's been talking about doing, that we're actually having a big shortage of appraisers. So today is my guest. I have John Brenan. He is a chief appraiser at Clear Capital Company, which is an appraisal management company. Welcome to the show, John.
Thank you, Janice. I appreciate you having me. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. Welcome back. Well, today we're going to talk about becoming an appraiser. It's one thing having an appraiser come to your house, but there's a lot of people, especially with the pandemic since 2020, the shortage we've heard about appraisers. Why not become an appraiser? Might sound like an interesting career. So, and I know from you, this is what has been your lifetime career. So just for a few moments, just tell us about your career real quick in appraising.
Yeah, well, thanks, Janice. I have been, I'm a career appraiser. I started as an appraiser right out of college. I started as a residential appraiser, performing appraisals on houses and condo units and things like that. I moved on to appraising commercial properties, office buildings, warehouses, hotels, motels, that kind of thing. I then became a manager for a residential appraisal district for a large financial institution. Then I spent almost 9 years as the chief of licensing and enforcement for the state of California's Bureau of Real Estate Appraisers, where we would issue licenses to people wanting to become appraisers, and we would take actions against those who didn't act as they were supposed to act as appraisers.
Wow.
And following that, I spent 16 and a half years at the Appraisal Foundation, which is the organization authorized by Congress to establish the minimum qualifications to become an appraiser, which we'll talk a little bit about today, and the standards that appraisers have to follow performing their appraisals. And then about 2 years ago, I came over to Clear Capital to be the chief appraiser here. So that's pretty much in a nutshell my background.
Okay. Well, I would assume since this has been your lifetime career, you enjoy appraisals.
I love appraisals. I think it's a fantastic career. I think it's, I thought it was a great career for all those years, and I think it still is today.
Here, here. And my viewers, if you don't know, I'm also a certified licensed real estate appraiser. I have been doing this for 23 plus years, and I really enjoy my career. It gives a lot of flexibility. You set your own schedule, you work for yourself. Now you can work for a bank, but I love being an appraiser and that flexibility, meeting people. So tell us about one, what's going on right now? It seems like there's a lot of different avenues of becoming an appraiser, but the problem is we're short of appraisers, it seems like, because appraisers, because that's been a field for quite some time, that they're older people, that they're aging, I won't say aging out, but they're getting in there. I think the median's about age is about 55, 60. So we need more people into the field. Now, do we have enough appraisers currently now to meet the demands of the mortgage industry and lending industry?
Well, that's a great question, Janice, and I think the answer to that is no. And I think that one of the things that we've seen with, for example, loan activity by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, who really they buy loans on the secondary market. They are the primary drivers of a lot of lending and appraisal activity. What we've seen particularly over the last few years, is this incredible spike in appraisal volume, lending volume. Yet the number of appraisers that actually do work for them has remained steady for many, many years, at right around 40,000. Now there are more appraisers than that in the country. Some don't do lending work. Some that do lending work don't do work for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. So it's a little bit, it's not an exact science to figure out the numbers. But I will say this: it has been a very, very challenging time for appraisers And that's because, the way to become an appraiser has changed dramatically since the days that people like me got into it. And it's really needed a new way. There's been a big need for a new way to become an appraiser. And when I say that, people say, well, why do you want more appraisers? Some appraisers say, no, we don't need more appraisers. You're just going to take money away from me, and that's my income.
Right.
What we've got to remember is we've got to look at this at the big picture. And the big picture is everything that I've done in my career for the last 30 plus years anyway has been about keeping appraisers relevant.
Mhm.
I think, as you said, it's a great profession, it's a great career, it's got great opportunities. But if there aren't enough appraisers to perform appraisals for lenders, for investors, for Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae, there are going to be big, big pushes to say, let's figure out another way because
Right.
we're being held up by the lack of appraisers. So it's really crucial for us to remain relevant to be able to bring new appraisers into the profession.
And the graph we put up showed how many appraisers were like the yellow line, and then the green and the blue was showing like which were like lending and the appraisers that are actually needed, the actual appraisals. And it shows that we're not making enough, or there's not enough people, appraisers, to actually fit the need.
Yeah, there are a lot of appraisers that, when things get busy, they can
Mm.
speed up a little bit, but the bottom line is there's only so much. I mean, as an appraiser, you definitely know when the work is busy that you
Right.
really ramp up, but everybody has a certain maximum capacity. And the type of loan volume and the type of requirements that are coming out now from investors to have this kind of information, there just simply aren't enough appraisers to be able to reach that capacity.
So it really is a good field to go into. There's a need.
Yeah, there absolutely is a need. There are people that will tell you that appraising has changed and is changing and will
Mhm.
change, and there's truth to all of that.
Mhm.
But the bottom line is, at this point in time and for the foreseeable future, these entities that are making policy about, being able to determine what, for example, a property is worth, to be able to make a decision on a loan, they want it to be done in a safe and sound way. And so, the way that has come about for many years has been appraising. And
Mhm.
so we think that there's always going to be the need for appraisers, uh, at some degree, no matter
Mhm.
what. There may be different types of assignments. There may be assignments that are done more from their office or desktop than
Mhm.
actual, appraisers that go out in the field all the time. There may be blends. There may be a lot of different things. But, an appraiser that really knows his or her marketplace is
Mhm.
a valuable asset for these folks looking to get a good, honest idea of whether or not the collateral is adequate to make a loan.
Right. And I would think a lot of that, a lot of the artificial intelligent computer programming isn't as good as an appraiser because they're just randomly numbers and they're not taking in all the factors. Random generated computer can't go take in the factor that you have a brand new kitchen versus someone who may not have a brand new kitchen. So you need that input from someone that does know the marketplace and as familiar. Now, the whole thing is, how are you going to become a appraiser now? How easy is it? And you have to go to school for 4 or 5 years, master's degree, because I think even that takes an account. If you have to go and get a 4 year degree, is this something that people want to do for appraising, though?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I guess I would start with, talking about historically, as I was, and many of my colleagues, were trained by a financial institution on what it means to be an appraiser, on how to appraise, on, helping mentor you all throughout the process, um, encouraging you to take education, appraisal related education. This was all before appraiser licensing even came about.
Mhm.
And so there was a really, really good way, to get into the business, and it really worked really well, by large degree. The problem has been that over the last several years, that not only do fewer and fewer financial institutions keep a staff of appraisers like that
Mhm.
that we're talking about to bring people in, many of those institutions themselves are no longer here. They've been
Mm.
bought out or merged or gone. So what that has done is that has put the obligation of bringing new appraisers into the business on the backs of the independent fee appraisers,
Mm.
people like yourself that do
Mhm.
appraisals for different clients. You're not working for one particular institution, et cetera. And the quite honestly, the question that most of them ask is, why do I want to do that? Why do I want to spend my time and my money and eventually train somebody and give them the experience just so they can turn around and go into competition against me
Mm.
and take some of my income? So that the whole training model is a real, it's become a real antiquated model in today's world. But I'd also say to your question about the qualifications, I think there has been recognition that there's been a need to update the
Mm.
qualifications to be more relevant today. For
Mhm.
example, when I was with the Appraisal Foundation, the Appraiser Qualifications Board reduced the amount of experience that it takes to become an appraiser. They also made for the certified level, to be a certified residential appraiser, options beside other than a bachelor's degree to be able to get to become an appraiser. And for the licensed residential classification, which is the other residential appraiser,
Mhm.
there's no college level degree required at all. There's just a couple of
Mm.
classes. So it's very, very important to recognize that times change.
Right.
And I think that appraisers today, particularly with things like technology and more immersed training, are able to be exactly as qualified and able to do appraisals, not spending necessarily the same amount of time that historically they have to become
Mm.
appraisers.
Now, normally, now each state is different. So if you are interested in becoming an appraiser, please check up the rules and regulations for your state specifically. So we're talking in general. I want to give that information out first to the viewers. But some states have the trainee, which is also similar to the licensed appraiser, that you have to work under a certified appraiser. Now, for those, there's basic classes you have to take, that focus directly on residential appraising. But then you need a mentor. How easy is it going to be to get a mentor?
I all I can tell you is that over the 30 years I've spent since working as a state regulator,
Mhm.
since working with the Appraisal Foundation, and then the last couple of years here, if I had a nickel for every time I had someone say I can't find a supervisor,
Mhm.
I'd be taking this call from a yacht somewhere, because it is clearly a major problem, and I don't mean to make light of it, but it is a major problem that, for people to be able to find a mentor to train them. Today, that has become somebody who either is training a family member, a
Mm.
friend. They're doing it as a favor. You've got some people that are doing it because they just really want to give back to the profession,
Mm.
but you add all those up and it just doesn't make a dent in those numbers that we showed in that chart of what needs to happen to be able to bring more appraisers into the profession.
Right. Because originally, I mean, we're both in the business for some years. So ages ago, yes, you could take the classes are typically anywhere from 3 to 5 classes now, basic foundational classes you have to take to become a real estate appraiser. And you take the state test, and lo and behold, you were a licensed appraiser and you didn't have to have any supervision. But there were reasons why they switched that, because I'm assuming, I would think that people needed some experience. They couldn't just read a book and now I'm out there doing appraisals, correct?
Yeah, it's funny because people say, "Well, is appraisal that hard that you just can't learn to do it?" And
Right.
and I say the answer is no. It's not that it's that hard, but it's a little abstract. It's
Right.
not something that you can just read in a book and say, "Got it, I'm going to go do it." You need to kind of learn the nuances. You need to understand the typical procedures and practices that an appraiser uses. You have this educational foundation that you talk about that really gives you the kind of, okay, now you understand what you're doing in this, what this field is about. but to get in and practice every day and be able to, be able to determine when you get an appraisal assignment, is this something I can do? Is this
Right.
something I'm qualified for? What am I getting into here? What are, you've got, everybody can provide examples of,
Mhm.
different properties, whether it be a home
Mm.
in a very, very historical downtown district,
Right.
or something
In
that's
a
out on
subdivision.
acreage and rural. you know you're an appraiser, you could get those type of assignments. And so you just can't read a book to say, okay, I know what to do in those situations. You need some hands-on
Yeah.
experience to learn the ins and outs.
So you do need a mentor. But the whole thing is now, and I know they did change the rules that you needed a mentor, and it was a lot of hours. So they did reduce that at least. But it's like, how do we even find a mentor? Because, like you said, a lot of appraisers are afraid of, I'm going to train you and then you're going to steal all my clients. And then I'm out of money. Or better yet, just having the time or just having some stranger in your car with you going on appraisals with. So it's easier to train families, but if you're not in that business, and I think that's the reason why there's an issue with diversity. There's not a lot of diversity in appraisals. There's not a lot of African American or Hispanics or Asian appraisers. The appraisal industry, which a lot of people don't know, is over 85% Caucasian white Americans. So there's an issue with that. And it's like, well, how do other different diversity or different people be able to get into this field if they're not in a family line?
Well, you couldn't have hit it on the head more solidly. Unfortunately, our profession contains a lot of people that look like me. We say male, pale, and stale is the descriptor. Um, and all I can say is that everybody that you talk to um, agrees that there is not enough diversity in appraising. So I want to make sure that gets said right from the start. Nobody is saying, "Oh, no, we're fine, we're fine." Part of the problem, as you said, if today, if you don't have a family or friend to bring you into the business, you're not going to get into the business under the current mentor model, the trainee
Right.
mentor model. And so, if you're if you don't happen to be the same skin color as the person that's supervising, or you don't happen to be in the same socioeconomic,
Right.
class, or whatever, the likelihood of them training you is very, very low. This just isn't acceptable. What the if for no other, I mean, first of all, it's diversity, it's the right thing to do. Let's just
Right.
get that out there right away, right?
Right.
Nobody can say that any group, any organization, any profession that's all made up of, one primary race, or
Mm.
whatever, that how can you say that that's healthy? And I'll give you an example. I mean, if I'm a person of color and I get an appraisal that was done, and I think that it's not a fair appraisal, I can request that it be reconsidered. And if it
Mhm.
gets reconsidered and they say, sorry, we're not changing anything, I look at it and I look at the people that are making those decisions, and none of them look like me.
Right.
And so, what type of credibility as a profession do we have when the outside world looks at us and says, this is kind of like an old boys club? This is not
Mm.
something that is a fair way to evaluate my property, because these people don't know me, they don't care about me, they don't look like me, they don't understand the things I love. So it is very, very, very important that we get more diversity in, even besides
Mm.
that just being the right thing to do.
Right. Now I know people can send out letters and maybe by chance they can get uh, a mentor, but it is going to be hard. And even if, like, even for me, I have to work for myself too. For me to go out and take someone else with me, I'm going to have to do more appraisals, more work on me. Is there any other solutions we can do possibly to
Well,
replace that mentor?
thankfully, yes, Janice. The Appraiser Qualifications Board, which sets the national qualifications
Mm.
requirements, and you made a great point early on about, you need to talk to your state, because states are allowed to create requirements above those national requirements. They can't go below them, but they
Okay.
can create requirements above. So the things I'm talking about now are the national requirements. But the Appraiser Qualifications Board, effective January 1st of last year, allowed a new alternative to that supervisor trainee mentorship model we're talking about.
Okay.
It is a program called the Practical Applications of Real Estate Appraisal. It's a mouthful.
Yeah.
The acronym is PAREA, which doesn't
Korea.
sound particularly pleasing, but nonetheless.
Okay.
And in a nutshell, what PAREA is, it's using today's technology to simulate the training environment, to
Wow.
be able to allow people to come in instead of going and finding that mentor that they need to provide all that training for. They can work on a computer system. They can work on their laptops, on their phones if they like,
Oh, wow.
getting this training and going through it. And this is designed to replace the experience component that you need to get a license. It's important to remember that people still need to do that required education, that
Right.
foundation that we talked about. They have
Okay.
to do that before they could enter a PAREA program. But
Okay.
once they get that education done, and then they enter the PAREA program, which is totally self-paced,
Hmm.
they then would have the education, the experience, then they would apply to the state to be able to take their test, and boom, they're a licensed appraiser.
But
Now,
don't they need some type of interaction with someone in case they have questions?
yeah, absolutely. And one of the hard line requirements, there are many hard line requirements in this PAREA
Hmm.
experience model. One of them is that there are certified appraisers that act as mentors through the process. And they
Hmm.
have to have the same requirements as a supervisory appraiser does today with a trainee.
Okay.
So these people are qualified, and they have to be there for any questions that may come up, clarifications,
Hmm.
but B, there are mandated points throughout this training that the mentor has to say, all right, let's see what you've been doing. Let me take a look. They look
Hmm.
at the exercises that have been done. They look at the way that the person has progressed through. Did they need to go back and do something 8 or 9 times? Did they get it on
Hmm.
the first time or two?
Hmm.
And they can evaluate it. And before the person's allowed to go to the next part of the training, the mentor has to say, yep, you're good to go. And they go to the next part. So there absolutely is someone to provide that oversight to make sure that the participant in the PAREA program is able to understand what they're doing properly before they can move on.
So they're like neutral mentor teachers in the sense that they're not worried about competition. They're like mentor professors trying to teach you and give you actual hands on versus just that book knowledge, which is just sometimes reading the book. So this way you,
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. These are folks that are hired by the PAREA provider to
Mhm.
be those mentors, to be able to do exactly as you say, to evaluate how somebody's doing, to determine whether or not they have understood properly before they can move on. So no, they're not training their competition. They're not worried about that. This is something that is done on a national basis
Mhm.
so that people can practice in whatever market they decide to once they get their license.
Okay. Now this is on the national level, so you got to find out from their state if they approve them. What type of companies would they even look for to help? Because that's really what's holding people back from becoming appraisers, getting that supervised mentor experience.
Yeah, so there will probably be so first of all, let me say this. There are no currently approved PAREA programs
Mhm.
available on the street today. Um, that is one of the things that people are wrestling with as we look
Mhm.
at this. Hey, we need to get these things up and running. There are probably going to be somewhere between 5 and 10 at the most, I would think, PAREA providers out there
Mhm.
that people will be able to go sign up with, get that experience, move on to take their test and get their appraiser license. There are varying levels of time. This PAREA program, as you might imagine, isn't cheap to build. You're using a lot of very state of the art, high tech solutions to be able to help this. I mean, it doesn't make sense for somebody that's trying to understand the physical characteristics of a home, for
Mhm.
example, to just see a cartoon drawing of a home that they really, it doesn't help them learn. So there may need to be things like, virtual reality segments where they're looking at a real house and walking through it and looking at the house just like you would a real house. So it's not an easy thing to do. So that's the reason there aren't any on the street. We are developing one, as are a few other entities out there. Our goal is to have ours available this year. We hope to have it ready to go. People could sign up, they do their education, come sign up for our career program, get the type of training that they need to be able to get to pass that test and to get their license in practice.
Right. And then after they pass, they are actually fully licensed and they don't have to work under someone.
That's right. Some people are
Well, I mean,
mistaken.
they could be independent if they wanted to.
That's
They don't
right.
need a
That's
mentor.
right. Some people think that the people going through these career programs need a trainee license or required to be a trainee, and that's not the case. The only thing they have to do is pass that education that's required for whatever license it is that they're seeking.
And this will be a benefit and helpful with diversity also because it won't have to worry about that having just family or looking at appearance, getting someone who you know or feel comfortable with. It would eliminate that or at least make it better. It should eliminate it actually.
I can't tell you how proud I am of that aspect of this. I am so excited. Like, for example, you're right that those people on their own can find their way into a career program, and we can have greater diversity in the profession and done quickly. This isn't a 10-year process. This is something
Right.
where somebody can get their training in a matter of months and be practicing, within 6 months of starting their entire appraisal career.
Mhm.
One of the things that we are doing specifically, we have partnered with the National Society of Real Estate Appraisers, which is a primarily African American appraiser trade association. They
Mhm.
have relationships with the HBCUs. We're going to be out there at college fairs. We're going to be out there right from the start talking to people of color and other minorities, women. We need more women. We need
Yes.
more diversity, and be able to try to get their attention, look at this as a career, and get them in as quickly as possible and get them into the practice.
Right, because besides that, yes, there's only I think it's 2 to 1 when it comes to male and females. We need more females, we need more diversity, African Americans, Hispanics, Asians, even those percentages are so small, one digit numbers and percentages of the diversity. And we need to make that change. And besides that, it's a great career, meeting people, getting out there, flexibility of being your own boss. It is a superb career and it's not hard to get into. So, um, last minute advice for people about if they want to be a appraiser. Your recommendations about being one. Few minutes, 20
Yep.
seconds.
Yep. I just say real quickly, there are a lot of people out there that have been frustrated for a long time that would great appraisers, and there now is this option that there is no brick wall for them anymore. They would be able to get that license, to practice and move on. So I would encourage anybody who's thinking about appraisal as a career. This is a new day, and this is an opportunity that has not been there before. And if it's something you're interested in, please, by all means, consider it.
Right. And also, if you're a broker, this isn't a bad career too to add it to a second avenue. So, well, that's the end of our show. Thank you very much, John, for coming. Um, this is Why Not with Janice, your host, and this topic was becoming an appraiser. Please like us on Facebook and YouTube, and hopefully we'll have John and you in the studio again to talk to you.
It'd be my pleasure. Thank you, Janice.
Thank you very much for coming. Thank you for watching. Have a nice night. Bye bye.